My name is Rachel Chen, and last Thanksgiving, my family taught me that sometimes the best revenge comes served with cranberry sauce. I'm 32, a software developer in Boston, and until that day, I'd spent my entire life trying to prove my worth to a family that treated me like a backup plan. The scene was my parents' sprawling Victorian in Cambridge, all polished hardwood and antique furniture that nobody was allowed to actually use. The dining room could seat 20, but somehow I ended up at a card table by the kitchen trash can, while my more successful siblings enjoyed the main table's prime real estate. Rachel, honey, you understand, right? My mother's voice dripped with fake sweetness. We need to seat the partners and children at the main table. You're just you. She adjusted her pearls, already turning away before I could respond. I glanced around at my designated spot, a wobbly folding chair, a paper plate instead of the family china, plastic utensils that would probably snap if I tried to cut the turkey. The trash can loomed beside me, a perfect metaphor for how they saw me. My sister Amanda's husband, a hedge fund manager, was loudly discussing his latest acquisition. My brother Michael's wife was showing off their twins' private preschool photos. And there I sat, despite my master's degree and my position at a leading tech firm, relegated to what my family considered the kids' table. Except there weren't any kids, just me and the garbage. I could feel eyes occasionally flicking toward me, followed by whispers and subtle smirks. They thought I couldn't hear them, but I caught snippets. Still single, living in that tiny apartment, could have married James from the country club. Then Grandma Chen walked in, and everything changed. To understand why I was sitting next to the kitchen trash, you need to know about the Chen family hierarchy. In our house, success was measured by three things: marriage, money, and maintaining appearances. I'd apparently struck out on all three. Amanda, 35, was the golden child. She'd married rich, had the perfect house in Beacon Hill, and spent her days organizing charity galas. Michael, 30, was the prodigy youngest partner at his law firm, twins at the right time, wife from the right family. Then there was me, the middle child who dared to be different. I'd turned down an arranged marriage to James Wu, son of my father's golf buddy, choosing instead to pursue my career in software development. Programming is for boys, my mother had said, her disappointment heavy in every syllable. No man wants a wife who codes. My parents, Richard and Helen Chen, had built their reputation in Boston's Asian American elite through decades of careful social climbing. Dad's surgical practice and mom's real estate empire were their pride and joy. Their children were expected to follow suit, marry well, join the country club, and have 3 kids before 30. Instead, I bought a loft in Somerville, adopted a rescue cat named Binary, and poured myself into building financial software that helped ordinary people manage their money. My success didn't fit their narrative. The 6-figure salary meant nothing without a husband to share it with. The tension had been building for months before Thanksgiving. Every family dinner became an interrogation. When are you settling down? Why can't you dress more professionally? Amanda's friend's brother is single. The pressure was constant, suffocating. But Grandma Chen, she was different. She'd watched it all with quiet, knowing eyes. The pattern started when I was 12, while Amanda got private violin lessons and Michael had his tennis coaching. I taught myself to code using library computers. My parents called it a weird hobby and refused to buy me a laptop. So I babysat, walked dogs, and saved every penny until I could afford my own. At 18, I got into MIT with a partial scholarship. Community college would be more practical, Mom suggested. You could live at home, help with the real estate, business. When I refused, they made it clear I was on my own. While my siblings got condos and car allowances, I worked 3 jobs between classes, living on ramen and determination. The disrespect was subtle but constant. Family photos mysteriously excluded me. Holiday gifts became increasingly impersonal. Generic gift cards while Amanda got diamonds and Michael received Rolex watches. At Chinese New Year, my red envelope contained exactly half of what my siblings received. The message was clear. I was worth less, but I persevered. My first job out of college paid $85,000. Within 5 years, I'd tripled that, leading development teams and launching successful apps. I bought my loft with my own money, invested wisely, and built a comfortable life. Yet at family gatherings, my achievements were dismissed as lucky breaks or just a phase. Last Christmas, I overheard Mom telling relatives I was still finding myself. This while I was negotiating a $1 million contract for my company. When I tried showing Dad my latest project, financial software that helped low-income families budget better, he changed the subject to Amanda's new pool house. The final straw came when they excluded me from Grandma's 80th birthday dinner, claiming it was immediate family only. I later learned even distant cousins had been invited, so there I sat by the trash can, picking at dry turkey with a plastic fork, when Grandma Chen made her entrance. At 81, she still commanded attention, her silver hair perfectly styled, her silk cheongsam, a deep burgundy that matched the cranberry sauce. The room immediately shifted. "Ah, Ma," my mother rushed forward. "Let me get you a seat at the main table." But Grandma's eyes were fixed on me, narrowing at my paper plate and isolated position. Without a word, she walked past the elaborate place settings and expensive centerpieces, pulling up a folding chair next to mine. "Ah, Ma, please," my father protested. "That's not comfortable for you." His voice carried that edge of panic I'd heard whenever someone threatened to disturb his carefully orchestrated family image. Amanda and Michael exchanged worried glances. "I sit with Rachel," Grandma announced in her accented English, her tone leaving no room for argument. The silence that followed was delicious. I could see my mother's perfectly Botoxed forehead trying to crease with concern. The next 20 minutes were excruciating for everyone except Grandma and me. She asked about my work, actually listening as I explained my latest project. When I mentioned my team's success, she nodded approvingly, while my siblings squirmed in their expensive chairs. "Such important work," she said loudly, "helping ordinary people manage money. Better than moving it from one rich pocket to another, yes?" She looked pointedly at Amanda's husband, who nearly choked on his wine. Then Grandma reached for her large, leather handbag, the one she'd carried for as long as I could remember. "Before dessert," she announced, "I have an announcement to make." Her English always got slightly worse when she was about to do something dramatic. My mother's nervous laugh cut through the tension. "Ah, Ma, perhaps after now," Grandma said, firmly, pulling out a thick envelope. "I have sold my properties in Hong Kong," Grandma declared, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. "Total value, $12 million US. She paused, letting that number sink in. My mother's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. "As you know, I live a simple life and need very little," Grandma continued, her eyes sweeping across the room. "This money, I have decided where it goes." She patted the envelope with her weathered hands. "Rachel will receive everything." The explosion was immediate. Amanda's fork clattered against fine china. Michael stood up so abruptly his chair toppled backward. My mother made a sound like she was choking on air. "All these years," Grandma went on, ignoring the chaos, "I watched. I see who builds, who takes. Rachel builds, creates something from nothing, helps others. The rest of you?" She shook her head. "This is ridiculous," my father sputtered. "Rachel doesn't know anything about managing that kind of money. She's not married, has no family experience. She builds financial software for major companies," Grandma cut in sharply. "Makes more money than your precious son-in-law, who loses millions in bad investments." Amanda's husband turned an interesting shade of purple. My mother rushed to Grandma's side, reaching for the envelope. "Ma, you're not thinking clearly. Let's discuss this as a family." Grandma pulled the envelope away with surprising agility. "Papers already signed. Lawyers already paid. Decision final." She turned to me, her eyes twinkling. "Sorry about the trash can seat, Rachel. Maybe now you buy a bigger table." I sat there, stunned, as my family erupted into increasingly desperate arguments. Through the chaos, Grandma calmly poured herself more tea, looking entirely pleased with herself. The paper plate in front of me suddenly seemed hilarious. My last meal as the family disappointment. The next hour was a masterclass in desperation. Amanda, tears smearing her perfect makeup, reminded everyone how she'd named her daughter after Grandma, conveniently forgetting she'd only done so after learning about Grandma's property portfolio. Michael launched into a legal lecture about elderly rights and sound mind documentation, until Grandma silenced him with one raised eyebrow. "Your grandfather," she said, cutting through their protests, "built everything from nothing, came to Hong Kong with $10 in my pocket. I worked 18 hours every day." She reached for my hand. "Rachel reminds me of him. Same spirit, same heart." My mother tried a different approach, her voice honey, sweet. "Rachel, darling, surely you see this isn't fair to the family. We could split it equally, like you split Grandpa's wedding gift money?" I asked quietly. The room fell silent. "The money he gave each of us for our future? The money you convinced me to invest in Amanda's first house?" Grandma nodded approvingly. "Tell them, Rachel. Tell them everything." So I did. About the $50,000 wedding gift from Grandpa that my parents had pressured me to share with Amanda for her down payment. About about the family business shares that were supposed to be split equally, but somehow ended up in Michael's portfolio, about every time they'd taken from me while calling me selfish for wanting to keep anything for myself. I watched, Grandma said, for years, saw how they took your inheritance, your opportunities, saw how you build anyway, create success without family money, help others while they help only themselves. She patted the envelope. Money shows true character. They see money, become wolves. You see an opportunity, become a builder. My siblings stared at their plates, finally silent. My parents looked like they'd aged 10 years in an hour. And me? For the first time in my life, I felt seen. The family meltdown went digital within hours. Amanda's perfectly curated Instagram, usually full of charity galas and designer outfits, suddenly featured tearful stories about family betrayal and elderly manipulation. Michael's wife posted cryptic LinkedIn updates about protecting family legacies from outside influences, as if I were some stranger who'd wandered in from the street. Distant relatives I hadn't heard from in years started flooding my phone with messages. Cousin Jenny, who'd ignored my existence since high school, suddenly wanted to reconnect over coffee. Uncle Peter, who'd once told me computers were a waste of time, now wanted to discuss investment opportunities. My mother launched a full-scale WeChat campaign, telling every Chinese family in Boston's elite circle that I'd brainwashed Grandma. The rumors got creative. I'd threatened to put Grandma in a nursing home. I'd hired a feng shui master to curse the family. I'd secretly married a cult leader. Each story is more ridiculous than the last. But Grandma? She was having none of it. She posted a single video on WeChat, her first and only social media appearance, speaking in clear Cantonese and English. I am not manipulated. I am not confused. I know exactly what I'm doing. My money goes to someone who will use it wisely, not waste it on showing off. The video went viral in our community. Other elderly relatives started sharing stories about entitled children and forgotten values. A generational divide emerged, the old guard nodding in approval, the younger social climbers seething. Through it all, I maintained my silence. I went to work, developed my software, and had weekly dim sum with Grandma. When reporters from Chinese-language newspapers called asking for comments about the Chen family inheritance drama, I simply said, family matters are private matters. My composure drove them crazy. They wanted tears, drama, public fights. I gave them nothing. The legal proceedings were surprisingly straightforward, thanks to Grandma's meticulous planning. She'd spent 2 years quietly documenting everything, the family's financial manipulations, the pattern of exclusion, even recordings of my parents bragging about how they'd redirected my grandfather's gift money. Her lawyers had ironclad paperwork, making any challenge futile. Michael's attempts to claim Grandma was mentally unfit backfired spectacularly. Her doctors provided recent cognitive assessments showing she was sharper than most people half her age. When he tried arguing undue influence, Grandma's detailed records of the family's past financial manipulations emerged. He dropped the case. After his law firm's partners expressed concerns about the publicity, Amanda's social media campaign imploded when her country club friends started distancing themselves. Apparently, publicly attacking your elderly grandmother over money wasn't considered good form. Her husband's investment losses came under scrutiny, and suddenly their perfect life showed cracks. They quietly listed their Beacon Hill house, downsizing to something more practical. My parents faced their own consequences. Their carefully cultivated image in Boston's Asian community crumbled. Other successful immigrant families, who'd always seen them as role models, now whispered about karma and justice. Dad's surgical practice saw a decline in wealthy Chinese patients. Mom's real estate empire lost several key investors. But the biggest change was in me. The weight of seeking approval, of trying to prove my worth to people who'd never truly value. It lifted. I expanded my financial software company, focusing on educational tools for immigrant families. The work became more meaningful, knowing I was helping others avoid the financial manipulation I'd experienced. Grandma moved into a luxury apartment near my loft. Her choice, not because she needed to. We had dinner together 3 times a week. She taught me to make her secret xiaolongbao recipe and shared stories about Grandpa's early days that I'd never heard before. 1 year after the Thanksgiving incident, my life had transformed in ways I never expected. The money itself wasn't the biggest change. It was the freedom from toxic toxic expectations. I expanded my company, focusing on financial literacy for immigrant communities. We developed apps in 12 languages, helping families understand everything from credit scores to investment basics. Grandma became my closest confidant and unexpected business advisor. Her decades of property management experience proved invaluable. Every Sunday, we'd have dim sum at her apartment, discussing business strategies while folding dumplings. Money is a tool, she'd say, like a knife, can hurt or can create, depending on the hand that holds it. I bought a historic brownstone in Cambridge, ironically just blocks from my parents' house. But unlike their museum, like home, mine became a gathering place. I hosted weekly dinners for young tech entrepreneurs, many of them children of immigrants like me, creating the supportive family environment I'd always craved. Binary, my cat, got a companion, a three-legged rescue named Python. Grandma spoiled them both shamelessly, sneaking them pieces of her famous char siu when she thought I wasn't looking. The house was filled with laughter, ideas, and the kind of warmth that had nothing to do with wealth. My parents made attempts at reconciliation, each one carefully calculated, first through intermediaries, then with tearful phone calls about family unity. But Grandma taught me something valuable. Forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the cage. I maintained polite but distant contact, focusing on building relationships that nourished rather than drained me. The most surprising change was in how I viewed myself. The girl who'd sat by the trash can, trying to prove her worth, was gone. In her place was a woman who understood that true value isn't in bank accounts or social status, but in how you use what you have to help others rise. Sometimes I drive past my old spot near the trash can. My parents still host Thanksgiving, though I'm no longer on the guest list. The exclusion that once hurt now feels like freedom. Last year, I hosted my own celebration. Entrepreneurs, developers, dreamers, and of course Grandma, who made her legendary pearl meatballs for everyone. The $12 million didn't just change my bank balance. It revealed truths about wealth, family, and power. Money doesn't create toxic behavior. It unveils what's already there. My siblings had every advantage, yet chose to become the very thing our immigrant grandparents worked to rise above. Entitled Ungrateful, Obsessed with Appearances, Grandma taught me the most valuable lesson. True wealth isn't in what you have, but in what you build. She didn't just give me money, she gave me the validation I'd been seeking my whole life. Your grandfather would be proud, she told me recently, not because of money, but because you remember why we came to America, to build, to grow, to lift others. My financial software now helps thousands of families understand and manage their money. Every time I get an email from a first-generation college student saying our app helped them avoid predatory loans, or from immigrant parents finally understanding how to invest in their children's future, I think about that paper plate by the trash can. If you're sitting at your own metaphorical trash can right now, watching others enjoy the main table, remember this: your worth isn't determined by those who fail to see it. Success isn't just about money, it's about maintaining your integrity while building something meaningful. As for me, I keep that paper plate in my office, framed next to my company's first $1 million contract. It reminds me that sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting better, rising higher, and holding the door open for others to follow. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful revenge stories. And if you've ever faced betrayal or family drama, feel free to share your story in the comments, because your voice matters here.